The midnight air was heavy with a bitter chill, the kind that sinks deep into your bones and makes you regret leaving the warmth of indoors. A lone gas station stood under a flickering neon sign, its harsh glow slicing through the oppressive darkness of the highway. Inside, the young cashier Jimmy sat slumped over the counter, scrolling through his phone to fend off boredom. He was blissfully unaware of the storm brewing outside his glass door. Before we start, smash the like and subscribe buttons for more updates. The man who stepped into the gas station wore a weathered black hoodie pulled low over his face, the fabric wet from the sleet that had started to fall. His sneakers squeaked slightly on the tile floor, drawing Jimmy's attention. For a split second, they locked eyes. Jimmy offered a half-hearted, "Good evening," but the man didn't respond. Instead, his hand slipped into his hoodie pocket. The next few moments unfolded in slow motion. The man produced a rusty revolver and pointed it directly at Jimmy. His voice, gravelly and tinged with desperation, barked a single command: "Empty the register." Jimmy froze, his fingers trembling as he raised them in the air. Okay, he stammered. His mind raced, heart hammering against his ribs as he moved toward the register. He fumbled with the keys, trying to keep his movements deliberate so as not to startle the man with the gun. "I said hurry up!" the man growled, glancing nervously over his shoulder toward the glass doors. Outside, the highway remained empty, save for the occasional cars speeding past. Jimmy opened the drawer, the sound of the cash register ringing loud and unnervingly cheerful in the tense silence. He began stuffing bills into a plastic bag the man had tossed onto the counter. Fear tightened his throat, but he tried to keep his voice calm. "Look, man, I don't want any trouble. Just take the money and go." The robber didn't reply, his eyes darting between the door and the pile of cash. It was clear he wasn't just after the money. He was running from something, or someone. His sweat-soaked hoodie clung to him, and though the gun didn't waver, his hands trembled ever so slightly. Suddenly, a strange hum filled the room, low and almost imperceptible at first. It grew louder, vibrating through the floor tiles and rattling the glass display cases filled with candy and cigarettes. Both Jimmy and the robber froze, their eyes darting around the small station in confusion. The hum gave way to a crackling noise, and before either could react, a burst of light erupted in the center of the room. When the light faded, a boy stood there. He looked no older than 13, with a mop of golden blonde hair and a suit that seemed both anachronistic and futuristic at the same time. It was tailored to perfection, the kind of clothing that spoke of immense wealth and sophistication, yet his demeanor was anything but ordinary. He radiated an air of authority, as though he were used to stepping into chaos and taking control. Jimmy blinked, wondering if he had lost his mind. The robber took a step back, his grip tightening on the gun. "What the hell?" he whispered, his voice cracking with uncertainty. The boy, who could only be described as otherworldly, raised a hand. "Gentlemen," he began, his voice calm yet commanding, "let's take a moment to reconsider our actions, shall we?" The robber swung the gun toward him, panic flaring in his eyes. What are you?" he demanded, his voice shaking. The boy smiled, a peculiar smile that didn't quite reach his eyes. "You can call me Baron," he said simply, taking a step closer. "And you, my friend, seem to have found yourself in quite the predicament." Jimmy opened his mouth to speak, but found himself unable to form words. His thoughts raced, trying to process what he was witnessing. Baron Trump, yes, that Baron Trump, was standing in his gas station, facing down a man with a gun as though it were a mere inconvenience. The robber gestured wildly with the revolver, his voice rising in pitch. "Stay back, kid! I'm warning you!" Baron tilted his head, studying the man as though he were a curious puzzle. "You're warning me? With that antiquated firearm?" He chuckled, the sound oddly disarming. "I'm not sure you understand what's happening here." Without warning, the gun flew out of the robber's hand as if yanked by an invisible force. It clattered to the floor and slid across the tiles, coming to rest at Baron's feet. The boy didn't even flinch. He leaned down, picked up the weapon, and examined it with mild curiosity. "A .38 special," he mused. "Haven't seen one of these in a while." The robber stumbled backward, his eyes wide with terror. What are you?" Baron didn't answer immediately. He placed the gun on the counter, well out of the robber's reach, and turned his attention to Jimmy. "Are you all right?" he asked, his tone softening slightly. Jimmy nodded dumbly. I think so." Baron gave him a reassuring smile before turning back to the robber, his expression hardening. "As for you," he said, his voice sharp and cutting, "it seems you've made some very poor choices tonight. But I'm feeling generous, so I'll give you an opportunity to redeem yourself." The robber stared at him, his chest heaving. "Redeem myself?" he echoed, his voice barely a whisper. Barron stepped closer, his piercing blue eyes locking onto the man's. "Yes, redemption. You see, I could easily have you arrested or worse, but I believe in second chances." He paused, letting the words sink in. "You're not a bad man, are you? Just desperate. Desperation can lead even the best of us astray." The robber's lips trembled, and tears welled up in his eyes. I didn't have a choice," he choked out. "I needed the money. My family, my kids, they're starving." Barron's gaze softened, but only slightly. "Desperation doesn't excuse your actions," he said, his voice firm. "But perhaps it explains them." He reached into his jacket pocket and pulled out a small, ornate box. Placing it on the counter, he slid it toward the robber. "What's this?" the man asked, his voice wary. "Your second chance," Barron replied enigmatically. "Inside that box is something far more valuable than cash. Use it wisely, and you might just turn your life around." The robber hesitated, then reached out and opened the box. A gasp escaped his lips as he peered inside, but he quickly snapped it shut, his expression a mix of awe and disbelief. "I don't understand," he whispered. "You don't have to," Barron said with a faint smile. "Just make better choices." Before the robber could respond, Barron turned to Jimmy. "Call the police," he instructed. "Tell them everything, but leave my involvement out of it." Jimmy nodded, still too stunned to argue. By the time he reached for the phone, Barron was already walking toward the door. The boy paused briefly, glancing back over his shoulder. "Oh, and Jimmy," he said, "change the batteries in your smoke alarm. That beeping is driving me insane." And then he was gone, vanishing into the night as suddenly as he had appeared. The gas station fell silent, the only sound the distant hum of traffic on the highway. Jimmy stared at the spot where Barron had stood, his mind racing to comprehend what had just happened. The robber, too, seemed frozen in place, clutching the mysterious box as though it were his lifeline. Neither of them spoke for a long moment. The robber shook his head, his expression unreadable. "I don't know," he murmured, "but he just saved my life." In the weeks that followed, the story of the gas station robbery spread like wildfire. The police found the robber outside the station, waiting to turn himself in. He was cooperative, almost serene, and when asked why he hadn't run, he simply said, "A boy gave me something that changed everything." As for Jimmy, he couldn't shake the memory of Barron Trump. The boy's calm authority, his mysterious arrival, and the way he had diffused the situation with ease, all of it felt like something out of a dream. But the surveillance footage, though inexplicably glitchy, proved it had been real. And somewhere far beyond the reach of the ordinary world, Barron Trump watched the unfolding events with a satisfied smile. For him, it was just another night, another opportunity to tip the scales toward justice in his own peculiar way. The gas station robbery was only the beginning of a chain of events that would stretch far beyond the understanding of those involved. As Jimmy recounted the story to curious police officers, reporters, and eventually his friends, the oddities surrounding Barron Trump became a magnet for speculation. What had happened to the robber after he turned himself in? What was in the box? And why had a boy who appeared to step out of thin air intervened in such a dramatic fashion? While Jimmy resumed his life with a newfound wariness of the night shift, the man who had tried to rob the gas station, later identified as Alan Grayson, faced his reckoning. At the police station, Alan insisted on handing the box to the detectives on duty, refusing to open it again. "You won't believe me unless you see it for yourself," he told them. When the lead detective, a grizzled veteran named Ramirez, opened the box, his typically stoic demeanor faltered. His hands trembled slightly as he examined its contents, but he quickly snapped it shut. "Take this to evidence," he ordered, his voice terse. Ramirez wouldn't share what he saw, but Alan's tone when he described the boy left an impression. "He wasn't just a kid," Alan said. "He was something else." Alan's story about his desperation resonated with the judge who eventually presided over his case. The mysterious circumstances surrounding the robbery and his seemingly miraculous decision to turn himself in earned him some leniency. Instead of prison, Alan was sent to a rehabilitation program aimed at helping people rebuild their lives. Over the next few months, he became a model participant, finding steady work and reconnecting with his family. But Alan's life was marked by a peculiar transformation. He began attending lectures and workshops about ethics and morality. He even gave speeches at local community centers, urging others to stay on the right path. His tale of redemption made him somewhat of a local celebrity, though he never mentioned the box or its enigmatic giver. Back at the gas station, Jimmy couldn't let go of what he'd witnessed. Baron Trump's appearance wasn't just bizarre. It defied all logic. He became obsessed, poring over online forums, conspiracy theories, and obscure references to time travelers and interdimensional beings. Every rabbit hole he went down seemed to lead to dead ends or increasingly implausible theories. Jimmy's curiosity eventually led him to a professor of theoretical physics at a nearby university, Dr. Eleanor Vega. Though skeptical of Jimmy's story, Dr. Vega was intrigued by the idea of a young boy appearing out of nowhere and apparently manipulating objects without physical contact. "What you're describing," she said, "isn't entirely outside the realm of possibility if we consider the existence of advanced technology or even a deeper understanding of physics than we currently possess." Dr. Vega's theories fascinated Jimmy. She explained how quantum mechanics hinted at the existence of parallel universes and how certain phenomena might suggest the manipulation of time. While she remained cautious about endorsing the idea of a time-traveling teenager, she agreed to examine the gas station's security footage. When the two reviewed the tape, they were stunned. The footage showed the glowing light and Baron Trump's appearance, though the frames immediately before and after his arrival were inexplicably corrupted. Dr. Vega paused the video and stared at the boy's image, her scientific detachment giving way to awe. "This isn't a hoax," she murmured, "but what it means, I can't say." Meanwhile, Baron himself had moved on to other tasks, though the events of that night lingered in his mind. He often operated in secrecy, stepping into moments of crisis to nudge people toward better paths. But what happened at the gas station was different. It had been far more personal. In his isolated sanctum, a space filled with both ancient artifacts and futuristic technology, Baron studied the ripple effects of his intervention. A holographic display mapped out probabilities and timelines, showing how Alan's redemption had prevented a cascade of tragedies. Yet there was an anomaly, a thread of uncertainty that Baron couldn't quite unravel. The anomaly centered around the box he'd given Alan. While the box had fulfilled its purpose in redirecting Alan's life, its power was not infinite. Baron knew that leaving such an object in the hands of someone unprepared could invite unforeseen consequences. He resolved to revisit the situation, though not immediately. Other crises required his attention. As weeks turned into months, the story of the mysterious boy who stopped a robbery gained traction on social media. Amateur sleuths and armchair theorists dissected every detail, turning Baron Trump into an internet sensation. Some claimed he was an alien, while others believed he was a time traveler. A few even speculated that he was an AI construct sent back from the future. Theories ranged from the absurd to the oddly plausible. One particularly persistent conspiracy theorist, a podcaster named Mitchell Crane, latched onto the story with fervor. Mitchell tracked down everyone involved, including Jimmy and Alan, and pieced together what little information he could find. His podcast episodes on the Baron phenomenon became wildly popular, drawing millions of listeners. Mitchell's investigation took an unexpected turn when he stumbled upon a reference to an obscure 19th century book, Baron Trump's Marvelous Underground Journey, written by Ingersoll Lockwood. The book, a whimsical tale of a boy adventurer, bore eerie similarities to the real-life Baron Trump. Mitchell couldn't resist exploring the possibility that the book was more than mere fiction. As Mitchell delved deeper, he uncovered hints that Baron's interventions weren't as random as they seemed. Some of his sources whispered about a shadowy organization, a group of individuals who claimed to be aware of Baron's activities. These whispers suggested that Baron's appearances were part of a larger, more complex plan, one with stakes far beyond a single gas station robbery. Mitchell began receiving cryptic messages from anonymous contacts, warning him to stop his investigation. But Mitchell's obsession with the truth only grew. He tracked down Dr. Vega and convinced her to share the corrupted footage from the gas station. Together, they analyzed the video, searching for patterns that might explain Baron's abilities. What they found was chilling, a series of energy signatures that matched known records of unexplained phenomena across the globe. As the pieces came together, Mitchell realized that Barron wasn't acting alone. There were others, figures who appeared in different eras and locations, subtly influencing events. The implications were staggering. Was Barron part of an effort to guide humanity? Or was he manipulating events for an unknown agenda? Months after the robbery, Alan's rehabilitation took an unexpected turn. During a charity event, a wealthy philanthropist expressed interest in Alan's story. The two struck up a conversation, and Alan, perhaps emboldened by the man's generosity, mentioned the box. The philanthropist, a man named Victor Lane, was immediately intrigued. Though Alan refused to reveal what was inside, Victor became obsessed with acquiring it. He offered Alan an exorbitant sum of money, but Alan refused. "It's not something you can buy," Alan said firmly. Victor, however, was not a man accustomed to being denied. His obsession with the box led him to hire private investigators to track its origins. As his inquiries deepened, Victor uncovered unsettling details about Barron Trump's other interventions. The box, it seemed, was far more than a symbol of redemption. It was a key to something larger, something Victor was determined to possess. Barron sensed the disturbance before it fully materialized. He knew Victor Lane's type all too well: ambitious, relentless, and dangerously curious. The philanthropist's fixation on the box had begun to distort the timeline, threatening to undo the balance Barron had so carefully maintained. Barron reappeared one evening at Alan's modest home, his arrival heralded by the same shimmering light. Alan, now a changed man, greeted him with gratitude but also concern. "I've done everything you asked," Alan said. "Why are you here?" Barron's expression was grim. "The box," he said simply. "It's drawn the wrong kind of attention." Alan nodded, his face falling. "I knew it might. I've kept it safe, but..." Before he could finish, the front door burst open and Victor Lane stormed in, flanked by two burly men. His eyes gleamed with triumph as they landed on Barron. "So it's true," Victor said, his voice tinged with awe. "You're real." Barron stepped forward, his posture unyielding. "You have no idea what you're meddling with," he said coldly. Victor sneered. "I'm not meddling. I'm taking what should be mine." Before Victor's men could act, Barron raised his hand and a wave of invisible energy swept through the room, immobilizing them. Victor staggered back, fear flickering in his eyes. "You don't understand," Barron said, his voice low and dangerous. "The box isn't a prize. It's a responsibility." Victor's bravado crumbled, but he still managed to whisper, "What's in it?" Barron's gaze hardened. "A choice," he said. "One that's not yours to make." Without another word, Barron approached the box and placed his hand on it. The object shimmered, then dissolved into light, leaving behind nothing but empty space. Victor fell to his knees, defeated, while Alan watched in silence, his heart heavy but relieved. Barron turned to Alan, his expression softening. "You've done well," he said, "but the box's time here is over." And just like that, Barron was gone, leaving behind a silence that was as profound as his presence. In the aftermath, the story of Barron Trump became even more mysterious. Victor Lane disappeared from public life, his obsession having unraveled his fortune and reputation. Alan continued his work as an advocate for second chances, though he never spoke of the box again. Jimmy, now a local celebrity thanks to his encounter, found peace in the ordinary, though he often wondered if he'd ever see Barron again. As for Barron, his work continued, hidden from the eyes of the world, but felt in the subtle shifts of history. He was a guardian, a guide, and perhaps something far greater, an enigma whose actions left ripples in time, reshaping destinies one intervention at a time. Months turned into years, yet the enigmatic events surrounding Barron Trump remained etched in the minds of those who had crossed his path. Each of them, Jimmy, Alan, and even Victor Lane, found their lives irreversibly altered, though in vastly different ways. Jimmy, once a young man content to float through life, became a seeker of knowledge. The encounter at the gas station ignited a fire in him that refused to be extinguished. His late-night shifts turned into periods of introspection, and he spent his days studying everything from quantum physics to ancient mythologies. He even reached out to Dr. Eleanor Vega again, forging an unlikely friendship with the professor. If you like this video, please give it a like and subscribe to our channel. Also, leave your comments below and tell us, what are your thoughts on a man robbing a gas station? We want to hear from you. Thank you for watching and see you next time.